Welcome to Infinite Perfect, a periodic retrograde amnesia podcast series built to assemble the devastating anecdotal happenstance that connects one of the hosts to their favorite games.
Episode 3, British People, featuring Wipeout and Wipeout XL, also known as Wipeout 2097.
In the fall of 1996, I was the recipient of two powerful invitations to the future. A vision quest of two distinct entities united by their fascination with what the future could be, should its design be invented and executed by architects obsessed with the holy trinity of electronic music, the idea of computers as weapons, and high-speed, texture-mapped polygons. These visions, which had been crafted by Japanese game developers and American filmmakers for most of my life, were now being shaped by British people. The fall of 1996 was when I got a Sony PlayStation close to my 13th birthday. Contained in the console box, in place of a traditional pack-in game, was a black bottom disc inside of a blue cardboard sleeve, the interactive CD sampler pack, Volume 1. On that compact disc were short demos of early games that helped to craft the PlayStation's original identity: Warhawk, Twisted Metal, Loaded, Mortal Kombat 3, and Wipeout, which was described as an anti-gravity racing game made by the prolific Liverpudlian studio, Psygnosis. Wipeout was one invitation to the future from British people. The second invitation came around the same time, maybe even the same weekend. I rented the movie Hackers on VHS. It starred Johnny Lee Miller, a British guy in his mid-20s pretending to be an American teen in high school. Hackers was also directed by a British guy, Ian Softly, and scored by another British guy, Simon Boswell. These were all British people. Let's hear some audio from the movie trailer for Hackers.
They're hackers.
Hackers penetrate and ravage private and publicly owned computer systems.
Hack the planet!
Hack the planet!
It's not just something they do.
Sure this sweet machine's not going to waste?
Are you challenging me?
It's who they are.
I win, you wear a dress on our date.
And if I win, so do you.
They can crack any code. And get inside any system.
Hello?
Mr. Gill, according to our records, you're dead.
I'm what?
But this time,
Come here, look at this.
It's some kind of virus.
Unless $5 million is transferred to the following account, I will capsize 5 oil tankers.
they just hacked the wrong guy.
Game's over.
Educated and erudite listeners may already be able to spot the direct convergence here, which is that in Hackers, Johnny Lee Miller, aka Dade Murphy, aka Zero Cool, aka Crash Override, in a bid to impress Angelina Jolie, aka Kate Libby, aka Acid Burn, attempts to beat her high score in a game of Wipeout. Zero Cool enters the Teen Zone arcade on a pair of rollerblades and skates down a ramp to find Kate grasping dual joysticks and playing Wipeout on a giant projection screen. She gets the high score, and Dade is impressed. Chauvinistically impressed.
That's a nice score for a girl.
Think you can do better?
I'll give it a shot.
Dade then grabs the controls, and we see a series of ships from Wipeout in some very weird UI elements. He plays the game for a grand total of 58 seconds, and his high score of 1,013,700 dominates Kate's score of 1,015,800. Dade sneers in Johnny Lee Miller's not quite American accent.
Well, it looks like I'm on top.
In his first time playing the game, Kate walks off in disgust, just as Dade's friend, Freak, that's Phreak, Freak, tells Dade,
"Congratulations. No one's ever beat her before. Just made an enemy for life."
End of scene. And yes, I know, the mesh of polygons and speed in the movie Hackers wasn't really Wipeout. The version of the game presented on screen in Hackers wasn't actually playable, and its strange depictions of target shooting and obstacle dodging did not go on to compose the gameplay we would later see in the final version of Wipeout. It was a target render, the bullshit-laden Killzone 2 video of its day. But it was enough for my hormone-addled 13-year-old brain to make the connection. Holy fuck. British people were out here making and playing video games nobody in other parts of the world had even thought of yet. British people were bearing the sole responsibility for making the future. The film crew who made Hackers and the programmers and artists at Psygnosis who built Wipeout were forecasting the future. They could see a time when we would all go by our online handles in real life. They knew the motorsport of the future involved blasting anti-gravity crafts across dystopian utopias. And they all agreed on one thing. The planet could be hacked.
Hack the planet! Hack the planet!
Shut up and get in the car!
Hack the planet! Hack the planet!
At the time in '96, I just thought Wipeout being in Hackers was a neat coincidence. Wipeout, the racing game on my demo disc, was the racing game Zero Cool played in a movie I just rented, thereby making me just like Zero Cool, the elite rebellious hacker from the future. Anytime I played Wipeout, I was actually just like Zero Cool, the most cool person imaginable when I was in 8th grade. I had yet to understand the path that was before me, a journey through a futuristic racing league across actual time and literal space, all supported by the artistic expressions of even more otherworldly British artists. Through Wipeout and its sequel, Wipeout XL, aka Wipeout 2097, I was exposed to even more pioneering, avant-garde expressions of contemporary British culture, which I interpreted as a 13-year-old as the clear and obvious destiny of the world. British people were just like me. They even spoke the same language, but they were from the future, and they were weaving orders of magic that were forbidden to the people who were making art in my United States. Wipeout presented me with a merging of next-level shit of British origin. The designers at Psygnosis, originally responsible for developing and publishing miserable Sega CD shit like Microcosm, Pugsy, and Flink, came out swinging on the PlayStation with Wipeout. Psygnosis even contracted Designers Republic, a British graphic design studio, to come up with the iconic team names, logos, packaging art, and the aesthetic ethos for Wipeout and Wipeout XL. Newfangled techno music composed the original Wipeout soundtrack, and it was handled in my North American version by Psygnosis' in-house Welsh musician, Cold Storage. Wipeout XL soundtrack featured Fluke, Underworld, Photech, The Chemical Brothers, The Future Sound of London, and the motherfucking Prodigy, all purveyors of fine electronic music, and all of British origin. Wipeout XL was also loaded with advertisements for Red Bull, a so-called energy drink. And yes, Red Bull is an Austrian company, but only the Brits were wild enough to cut an in-game advertising deal for a class of drink that didn't exist yet, and put it all over billboards and the intro screen of the game, and then sell that game in a continent where that drink was not even distributed. I wouldn't even know Red Bull was an actual beverage until like a decade later. The aesthetic and the name just fit in with all the other logos and the vibes of Wipeout XL. Drinking Red Bull would get you fucked up, if not more fucked up, than competing in the anti-gravity racing league. Only Wipeout pilots possessed a stomach strong enough to consume Red Bull. British people were the architects of the future, and Wipeout was where all of them, or at least the ones doing cool shit, showcased their craft. Prior to 1996, though, I didn't have much first-hand experience with British people or British culture. I grew up in the suburbs of Louisville, Kentucky, which qualifies and operates as a mid-major American city, but it didn't seem to have much of an international presence with anyone from the United Kingdom. As a kid, I never met or encountered British people with any regularity. My first memory of hearing a British accent in real life was standing in line for ice cream at Disney World in 1994 and hearing a tall man ask his wife if she wanted chocolate or vanilla in a strange accent that I will not reproduce here.
But I will. Chocolate or vanilla.
But it was an accent that I recognized from Mary Poppins, The Princess Bride, Robin Hood Men in Tights, and Monty Python. All I knew at 13 was British people existed across the Atlantic Ocean, no taxation without representation, and they may have invented the transatlantic slave trade. But mostly it was just that Carrie Elwes and Julie Andrews spoke English differently, which, in my head, was no different than talking to someone from Michigan or California. They said the same words I did, but they said those words fucked up. Along the same lines, the music that I was enjoying as a freshly minted teenager behaved along the same wavelengths. By 1996, Siamese Dream and Melancholy by the Smashing Pumpkins, Alapalooza and Smells Like Nirvana from Weird Al, And somehow, Coolio's first 2 albums were the albums that constantly found their way to the CD tape boombox in my bedroom. 1996 was still a bit too early for Britpop breakouts like Oasis, Radiohead, and Blur to enter my active interests, and I was too late for Lush, Ride, Slowdive, and most of the shoegaze scene that I enjoy now. Techno music, however we defined it in 8th grade, was new and exciting. Techno was electronic noise arranged and composed in a way that sounded fundamentally different from the cheesy synthesizers that came to define electronic music in the 80s. Techno sounded like it came from video games that didn't exist yet. Techno seemed like it belonged to the future. And for some reason, only British people were capable of making it. It's also important to note that for the most part, I wasn't used to hearing actual music playing inside of my actual video games. Sure, I enjoyed the soundtracks of Streets of Rage 2 and all of the Genesis Sonic games, but that was video game music. It was music from and for video games. Music forbidden to appear in any other medium. It would never come out of my radio, and I had no idea how to make it come out of my CD player. And yes, I had a Sega CD at that point, but the games I was playing, other than Sonic CD, sure as shit didn't make use of the Redbook audio provided through the bountiful storage of optical media. Wipeout and Wipeout XL may have been the first 2 games I played to license music from actual music artists. Actual techno artists. British people cracked the code. They figured out how to put real music in fake places like video games. Wipeout did for the British electronic music scene what Tony Hawk's Pro Skater did for pop punk in the late 90s. It defined the game as well as it defined the scene that birthed it. The 2 were inseparable and operated in tandem. My first experience with Wipeout, as I mentioned, was through the Interactive CD Sampler Pack, Volume 1, the demo disc. The Wipeout demo featured just 1 course, Ultima 7, but playing just 1 course allowed players to sense the texture of the rest of the game. Racing game courses make exceptional hardware demos because they have everything you need to get the feel of the game in a single lap. And you're left with imagining the full game through different courses in new places at varying times of day, all filtered through different vehicles with their own unique variables. A 1-course demo for a racing game will tell you everything you need to know about that game. It's the same reason why I and many others would go on to pay actual money for Gran Turismo 5 Prologue on the PlayStation 3. The version of Wipeout on that sampler disc is a short demo. There's a title screen, and while the game loads, you're treated to some track information for Ultima 7. Yes, track information. On the splash screen are 3 different outline views of the course from different perspectives. The location of the course told me it was in Canada. The loading screen also listed the service of the course as R3600 Racing Standard. I didn't know what that meant, but it seemed like it had to be important if the video game was telling me about it. After an extended amount of loading time, Wipeout finally launches its course, and I heard the voice, the British voice, counting down.
3, 2, 1, go!
Quick note, in 1996, I understood racing games, but I didn't have any prior experience of driving cars without wheels. I know, F-Zero came out over here with the Super Nintendo in 1991, but I didn't have a Super Nintendo. My neighbor Kyle did in 1993, but he never had F-Zero. I didn't even know what Mode 7 was, and I wouldn't be introduced to Captain Falcon until I played Super Smash Bros. In 1999. Funnily enough, Psygnosis would state that the original Super Mario Kart, and not F-Zero, was a direct influence on Wipeout. In an interview with Retro Gamer, Psygnosis designer Nick Burkham talked about playing Mario Kart with techno music blasting, thus birthing the Wipeout concept. Super Mario Kart also directly inspired the weapons and the concept of picking up weapons on the Wipeout course. I hadn't played Super Mario Kart at that point either. But goddammit, the demo. Okay, it loads you hear the voice screaming, "Go!"
Go!
And then techno music starts. You're defaulted into a first-person point of view. I get why racing games do this. It's more realistic in the game. All racing games feel like they move faster when you're closer to the ground. But I don't like it. I need to see my vehicle, and that's especially important if my vehicle looks sick as fuck. And every vehicle in Wipeout looks sick as fuck. Your default anti-gravity craft is the yellow and blue AG Systems model. Every single anti-gravity craft is a harsh collection of dramatic triangles, a series of javelins assembled and forged together for maximum aerodynamic efficiency. Every single one of them looks cool. Racing without wheels wasn't novel, but what Wipeout did, and what no other game I had played before had done, was put a pair of F-14 Tomcat afterburners on the back of each ship. This thing was running so hot that it had features of a jet engine, just like all the fighter planes in Namco's Air Combat. But it was a car, and I was racing it. It didn't take a lot to impress my 13-year-old mind. It was never easier to give into astonishment, especially in a fully polygonal world at the beginning of the 32-bit generation. Orange triangles blasting fire out of the back of the ship communicated Wipeout's singular disposition. You have never raced anything like this before, and you certainly have never gone this fast in a big, 3D, texture-mapped console game before. And that state of awe and admiration intensified when it was paired with the way the crafts in Wipeout felt. Did you ever get a hold of some magnets when you were a kid, or an adult? Not specifically the tiny, tacky magnets that formed the collage of bullshit on every refrigerator, but like the larger, thick-ass magnets with some decent weight and power to them. Magnets that used to have some kind of industrial or practical purpose. Or, even the magic magnet rocks they sold in the little cloth bags at Cracker Barrel. I remember carrying those around in my pockets as a kid and deploying them into my idle hands as a kind of fuck-around toy. Just something to do. Sometimes I would take one in each hand and try to force the literal polar opposite ends together and feel that magic between the magnets as their electrons told them to resist each other. Some kids licked 9-volt batteries or smoked a tobacco cigarette to get the feel for the occult measures of our child universe, but I played with magnets. As the prophet Shaggy 2-Dope once said, "Water, fire, air, and dirt, fucking magnets. How do they work?" Anyway, that's how the anti-gravity crafts in Wipeout feel. They feel like opposing magnets. There was a buoyancy to their balance, like a cross between the capable but forgiving suspension of a rally car and the inherent instability of a thrust-powered, floating, flying saucer. Pushing go on the ships, the vehicles, the cars, whatever you want to call them, hitting the accelerator in Wipeout feels like piloting two opposing magnets with the force of a jet engine. F-Zero didn't feel that way, and I don't know that it ever would. Extreme G and Aero Gauge tried to get there too on N64, but no other game ever nailed that feeling quite like Psygnosis did with Wipeout. And while Extreme G was made by Probe Entertainment, a London studio, clearly it wasn't composed of the same type of British people as the Liverpool-based Psygnosis. Without the convergence of disparate elements that formed Wipeout, there was no way to accurately reproduce the original experience. Each Wipeout game was an iteration of that feeling, and it only improved with experience and successive hardware. Everyone else was an imitator, and an inferior one at that, even if I did like F-Zero GX on the GameCube, which Sega produced in Japan. But that ethereal feeling, trying to control a vehicle defined by its lack of control, was contained and then amplified by Wipeout's air braking system. You didn't just push a button to stop the ship or perform the dance between gas and brake to kick out the rear end and drift around a corner. That wouldn't make sense. These vehicles don't even have wheels. Instead, affixed to the left and right triggers were fucking air brakes. Pulling both at the same time could approximate something of a traditional braking system, sure. But mastering the left and right brake in conjunction with cornering maneuvers could really make the ship sing. Proper timing, a feat only achieved with considerable skill and experience, could allow the player to over or understeer the craft to their particular whims. It was hard to feel like there was a right way to tackle a course with the variation allowed by Wipeout's air brake system. Finally, and we're still just talking about the demo, I know, but I want to draw your attention to the sound made by these vehicles. It's a cross between the ambient hum of an HVAC system and an idling jet engine. It's what I hear when I'm sitting in an airplane waiting for it to taxi to the runway, right after I twist one of those air vent nozzles overhead. That, for lack of any better descriptors, anti-gravity hovercraft sound effect carries the ship through the entire race. We take sound effects like this for granted now, but can you imagine trying to come up with what an anti-gravity racing spaceship sounds like in 1996? To combine the sound of air flowing beneath magnetic surfaces over wind tunnel-tested exteriors and just define the sound of anti-gravity racing, it's a fundamental element of world building to really sell the idea that Wipeout takes place inside of our own linear future. Here, listen to some white Wipeout noise. Wipeout has hard lore, by the way. It has a goddamn story bible. On that demo track, Ultima, you're subjected to no less than 3 billboards in the first 10 seconds. The first is for the real Psygnosis PS1 game, Tenka. The second is for the fake in-game race team, Phisar. The third is a picture of a flying saucer along with the text, "UFOs, they're here." While it's obvious that Wipeout has continuity, hell, 2 games in the series are called Wipeout 2048 and Wipeout 2097, You may be surprised to learn that the original Wipeout design document had a bullet-pointed timeline that went from 2018 to 2050, with the first Wipeout taking place in 2052, showcasing the inaugural F3600 Anti-Gravity Racing League. So yeah, UFOs, they're here. Let's look at a sample of that lore.
2018 AD.
The major governments of Earth finally confessed to the existence of so-called UFOs, explaining that the technological origins associated with anti-gravity machines lie firmly within the terrestrial boundaries of warfare developments. Many are still skeptical.
2024 AD.
Tests are carried out for preliminary research into the possibility of anti-gravity mass transportation systems. Test results are disappointing, and the government's conclusions are that it would not be cost-effective. The general public's suspicions are aroused as fuel taxes are increased shortly after the announcement. Many scientific communities around the world secretly continue research in the hope of solving the problems of efficiency and reliability. These groups of scientists become known as the AG community, although authorities are unaware of the scale of the research.
AG means anti-gravity.
2034 AD.
U.S. government is informed of the worldwide research continuing out of public funds and decides to crush the AG community through adverse media pressure.
2035 AD.
The AG community, under enormous legal pressure, nervously calls the world's press to Nevada for the unveiling of the first test flight of the efficient and reliable AG-driven vehicle, the NX IOOO. The flight was an overwhelming success, and public interest was swayed by the media away from recent underhand events.
2038 AD.
Worldwide ecological and economic optimism relieves tension between the Western world and the Middle East, which has been mounting since the discovery that the Middle Eastern oil supplies would run out 154 years prior to predictions made in the late 1990s.
2044 AD.
Regarded by many as the savior of all life on the planet, final engineering problems are solved and AG enters mass production and revolutionizes terrestrial transport. Smaller variants of the AG V6000 are introduced to the car industry and eventually the motor sport fraternity.
2047 AD.
F3600 Racing League is set up and is now regarded as the fastest growing sport ever. Many countries apply to the F3600 Commission to stage one of the championship races.
So all of the tech shit in Wipeout exists because humans of 1995's future past of 2018 reverse-engineered UFOs. What's better is Wipeout as a series actually keeps up with its own lore. In Wipeout 2048, the Vita prequel, crafts and courses feel weather-worn, dangerously unstable, and partially assembled from the old world of fossil fuels. 2048 feels and looks as much like a future Formula 1 game as it does an anti-gravity racing game. By the time we get to Wipeout Pulse, which takes place in 2197, the courses look like they're made out of glass, and the surrounding environments have the clean lines and World of Tomorrow purity that everyone expects of an idyllic, utopic future. My racing game knowledge is not absolute, but I don't recall many other series having this degree of thematic progression. Wipeout could happen. Wipeout will happen as soon as UFO disclosure happens. All video games, except Blasto, are prophecies.
Another job well done!
But for us here on this podcast, the demo is still happening. The defining feature of Atma, signaled by a stenciled countdown in meters on the side of the course, is the massive drop about 25 seconds in. There's even a huge billboard that screams danger right before the drop happens to let you know that it's dangerous. It's a huge downward slope on the course, and while I don't think the dive significantly affects your speed, it's fun to imagine that it does. Like ramping up to the top of a roller coaster, the perceived sensation of speed in Wipeout was enough to send my 13-year-old mind reeling. In the 2D era, video games could not play with vertical scale like that. They could neither sell the sensation of speed nor render it with any sense of verticality. A ridiculous drop like that also wouldn't make sense for arcade-flavored racers like Virtua Racing, Daytona USA, or Ridge Racer, which all kept at least one foot in reality. You'd have to go back to Atari's Race Drivin' to find a course designed that stupid. And Race Drivin' fucking sucks. Wipeout's demo also teaches players that, like Mario Kart, each course loads its surface with weapon pickups. Rockets are straight missiles. Mines leave rabbit turd-like trails of hovering explosives. Shields are shields, and Electrobolt is an electrical burst that temporarily slows an opponent. Weapon use by an opponent is not necessarily signaled by a sound effect, but rather an announcement by the British narrator. Here are some samples of that British voice.
Rocket, missile, mines, shockwave.
Weapons in the first Wipeout are rudimentary in their inclusion and execution, but they get the job done for a basic kart-style racer before the idea of a kart-style racer was much of anything beyond the original Mario Kart. Ultima 7 takes place in Canada. Wipeout relays this information by decorating the course with snow-covered coniferous trees, stretching mountains across the skybox horizon, and pushing the course through an old mining tunnel. You can find all of that in Canada. Again, this sense of place relays the feeling that the original Wipeout's courses are adapted from not only existing structures, but also motorsport racing leagues of the past. Like building a bobsled course for the Olympics, it feels like the R3600 racing standard is making do with what its environment has available. Much like the game itself, this shit is being tested for the first time. And that's the demo. It's one lap and it's over in fewer than 90 seconds. Once again, racing game courses are perfect for demo discs. It can tell the player everything they need to know about the full game. Here's what you drive, here's how it handles. This is what it looks like, this is what you can expect from its courses, this is how weapons work, and this is what techno music is. And this is how difficult it's going to be to put all of it together for every single race. If you want to be ultra reductionist, every element of a single race course in a racing game is the game. Other courses and vehicles are just variations of that original idea. Just sliders you move back and forth. Numbers don't go up, they just move around. Even in real life, every road is a race course, if you're crazy. The full game of Wipeout holds true to that thesis. 7 courses, one of which has to be unlocked, were testable by 4 different race teams, each with 2 pilots per team. Wipeout is specific with pilots rather than drivers for its human operators. It's also careful to call its vehicles anti-gravity crafts and not hovercrafts. There's a distinct difference. Race cars and boats have drivers. Aircraft and hovercraft have pilots. Google is no help with this topic, but RealNet member Neat speculated that a pilot controls anything that floats. But Power Rangers have pilots, and somehow Gundams from anime have pilots too. In any case, it's important to be specific and accurate when discussing any type of fiction that has very important lore. The music situation for the original Wipeout varies by region, wherever you bought the game. Cold Storage, that Welsh musician, handled the soundtrack for the version I played in North America, but PAL region versions contain tracks by the artists Orbital, The Chemical Brothers, and Left Field. The Sega Saturn version, which came out 6 months later, had 3 exclusive music tracks by Rob Lord and Mark Bandola. This was still a time when there were, for one reason or another, meaningful differences between console versions and regional releases. This is an audio medium, and it's impossible for me to show the racing team logos made by the artists at Designers Republic, but I can at least say their names out loud, and you can use the power of imagination to picture their logos inside of your brain mind. AG Systems, Oricom, QueerX, that's Q-I-R-E-X, and Physar in all capital letters. Those are the team names, and all of them sound exactly like the future anti-gravity racing teams that would exist. Each team also has 2 pilots with less impressive names, though I am slightly taken by Kel Solar, that's Solar with 2 A's, of QueerX, and John Deca, that's Deca with 2 K's, of AG Systems. I think the named pilots thing was dropped in later Wipeout games, but putting human faces on electronic avatars was definitely a thing in 1995 and 96. Destruction Derby, Twisted Metal, ESP and Extreme Games, Jet Moto, all of those had human pilots with portraits and occasionally 1-paragraph biographies. I wonder if there is fan fiction for Anastasia Charovsky or Arian Tetsuo, 2 of Wipeout's other pilots. I've already talked about 1 track, Ultima 7 to death, but Wipeout has 6 more. I think about racing game tracks in the same part of my brain where I think about fighting game stages, where the design is often the focus of what the player controls and everything happening in the background is in the background. But it's somebody's job to make all of that shit interesting. For example, Phantom Isle, one of the tracks in Ridge Racer Type 4, takes place in the middle of the afternoon in the middle of a hot summer. And sunlight bleaching every surface of that track makes it look like that. The mad scientists at Namco used the PlayStation 1 to accurately reproduce a hot summer day in Japan. Making a memorable course is possible if your team is talented enough. But there's just not a lot of raw material to work with when it comes to constructing racing courses out of the video memory inside of the original PlayStation hardware. Polygons are dedicated to the ground, the course barriers, and other racers. Static texture maps are stretched across the skybox and form the horizon. That doesn't leave a lot of room for a lot of stuff in the margins of a race course. And injecting any other kind of decoration, like the occasional airplane or helicopter flyby in Ridge Racer, must have taken careful allocation and collaboration of art design and technical resources. Wipeout's Ultima course has a shitload of billboards, sure, but it's also careful with its geometry-obscuring mountain walls and sporadically placed grandstands. Its only true features are a sky bridge, that downhill canyon, and some kind of World's Fair-adjacent tower structure near the end of the course. Racing game courses are characters in my mind. I love slowing down and figuring out what kind of sights someone on the art team felt were worth seeing. Carbonis is Wipeout's second track. It's located in Japan and its surface is reclaimed titanium. A sweeping series of Christmas trees gives way to a couple pagodas before you head inside a mountain. There are neon red lights inside the mountain tunnel, and I have no idea why other than the designer's ethos. It's there because it looks cool. Clean white light is for suckers, especially in the future. Carbonis is also the first course with small gaps in the track, jumps that you'll naturally fly over with any kind of speed. Its signature is two twin Buddhist sculptures, each sitting opposite each other in the lotus position. A giant snaky S-turn at the end finishes off the course. The third course is called Terramax, which sounds like a prison. It's in Germany. Terramax feels like it's built either in or on the side of a mountain, with sharp, sheared edges of cliffs shaping the character of the early segments. The wildest section comes after exiting a tunnel where you'll find yourself passing over a suspension bridge that leads to a fun ramp. The course ends with the passage through a giant silver man-made structure that feels like an artificial canyon. Karadura is the fourth course, and it's in Russia. The racing surface is something called carbonic iron. What the hell do you think that is? I don't think Russia as a country is doing too well in 2052 because the skybox of Karadura is a putrid shade of yellow. The course feels like it's plowing through a warehouse district where they store industrial waste. Even the trees around here are dead. The only other defining features, not assigned to the background, are nuclear power silos and smokestacks. Gross. Eridos 4 is the next track. It's in the US of A and the surface is blasted sandstone. This is your standard desert track. Desert varnish lines the curvy canyon walls of the opening turns, and it showcases the area's unique geological features. In the daytime league, the bright blue sky presents a nice contrast to the rust-colored canyons and the yellow sandy surface. The course concludes with some cacti, and the final edges are supported by a massive green-colored steel beam. Silverstream is the final course for Venom class. It's in Greenland, and the surface is artificial crystal. In practice, that blue racing surface and snowy mountain horizon texture means this is an ice and snow level. It's got ice tunnels. It's got snow stacked on pine trees. It's got massive icicles hanging down. It's got yellow directional arrows across the side of the course, lending Silverstream a frosty blue and yellow color combination. What it does not have, and this is a weakness across every Wipeout, is dedicated ice-level music. Wipeout's entire soundtrack is played at random or by choice, but the music isn't assigned to a specific course. The need to rave, wherever and however you like, comes at the cost of identity. None of Wipeout's courses feature a signature song. The final course, which has to be unlocked and is only available in the Rapier class, is Firestar. It's on Mars. No one knows what the surface is. It's the only course that lays the starting grid out in a hangar. The sky is red, the exterior surface is red, the horizon is red, Mars is red. Some tunnels and sidewalls with shades of blue and teal provide opportunities for interesting contrast, but Firestar mostly feels like a different take on Eridos 4. It's also hard as shit, and I can barely finish it before the timer expires. And those are the courses of the original Wipeout. It's also the first and only time each course had a day and night option. Venom class, the slower and easier mode, would take place during the day, while Rapier class, the faster and harder mode, would take place at night. Night is kind of a misnomer, however, as it usually changed the time of day to golden hour when the setting sun brings the colors out of everything the light still touches. Simba. Silverstream, the ice course, now has a pink and aqua sky. Eridos 4, the desert course, features a picturesque purple desert sunset. Kodera, the polluted-to-hell Russian course, looks almost exactly the same, which is hilarious. The twin Buddhas in Carbonis, for example, are an emerald shade of green in the daytime, and dark silhouettes, illuminated only by some red lighting, in the nighttime race. The original Wipeout helped break ground for the 32-bit generation. No one on console or PC had seen a game move like that before. I mean, look at what sufficed for polygonal racing games at the time of the 3DO or Jaguar. Crash and Burn got the spirit right, but it moved at 14 frames per second. Club Drive and Checkered Flag on Jaguar were abominations. You could take a trip to your local arcade and feel Virtual Racing and Daytona USA blow your hair back, but that was at a separate location, and it cost a lot of money. And every day in 1995 wasn't someone's birthday party. In an extremely narrow window, the original Wipeout was in contention for the best console racing game ever made. Seeing and playing Wipeout outside of its original time and place has its charms, but it is difficult to contextualize Wipeout against its peers unless you were there to see it firsthand. Wipeout's distinctive aesthetic and opposing Magnet's sense of vehicle control allowed it to look and feel different from anything released thus far in the 32-bit generation. The effect was amplified when it also sounded like it was from the future. In the truest sense of the idiom, Wipeout validated the necessity of the next console generation. 6 months after Wipeout was released, and 6 months before Wipeout's sequel would come out, a different collection of British people would introduce the rest of the world to one of the 90s most definitive statements of dance music. The music video for their debut single from their third album, The Fat of the Land, featured a scary man with a Heihachi Mishima haircut,
Heihachi Mishima,
which that's a man's head shaved bald down the center and wickedly spiked on the sides above his ears. This man was dancing around an abandoned train tunnel while wearing, despite his London birth, a sweater featuring the Stars and Stripes of the United States. This guy also had a septum piercing, a chain necklace, and his erratic movements suggested that he enjoyed drugs, and he wanted you to enjoy drugs too, maybe even with him. This man's name was Keith Flint, and together with Maxim Reality and Liam Hewitt, they made an album called The Fat of the Land that would go on to sell 10 million compact discs. I haven't told you their name yet. That group was, of course,
We are Prodigy.
Okay, I'm sorry, that music sample wasn't from the Prodigy song used in Wipeout. It's from a different song released 12 years later called Invaders Must Die. Actually, somehow that song would find its way into composing an entire level for Hi-Fi Rush in 2023. I just thought it would be a cool way to introduce the band. We're actually here to talk about a different era of the Prodigy. Firestarter is the name of the song that introduced the Prodigy to a majority of the MTV adult teenagers in these United States. The song features a sick Kim Deal guitar siren looping across one of the more menacing breakbeats ever recorded. The remainder of the music video features Keith Flint dancing around like a madman and at one point grinding a circular saw against the rails of a train track, an action that seems immensely, texturally satisfying. Over and over across the song, Flint declares that he is indeed the Firestarter, the Twisted Firestarter. He's also the Trouble Starter, Punkin' Instigator, and self-inflicted Mind Detonator, the one infected, Twisted Animator. This motherfucker's real last name is Flint. He is literally the Firestarter. This is Infinite Perfect. We can do anything we want. Chris can't stop me.
Stop it. Stop doing this.
Here's the Prodigy's Firestarter in full. The Fat of the Land was a banger of an album. If Firestarter made club drugs, dancing, and the emerging rave scene seem cool, the next single from the album, Breathe, wondered what it would be like if you tripped too hard, fell into hell, and lost your mind under the same set of circumstances. It summed up the holy trinity of the drug experience with the classic lyric, psychosomatic, addict, insane. The third single, Smack My Bitch Up, arrived with a cool Keith hook in an infamous music video that subverted every expectation laid out by its opening premise. The video is a first-person adventure, and its protagonist's execution of violence, sexual assault, and rampant drug use, and nudity, earned a ban from MTV and also YouTube. In 2024, the only place I could watch it uncut was on Vimeo. About the Smack My Bitch Up video, the Prodigy's Liam Howlett was quoted as saying, "It's not to everyone's taste, but not everything we do is." No radio station was going to play the song, so we thought we'd make a video that no one would play either. The singles off The Fat of the Land, Firestarter, Breathe, Smack My Bitch Up, asked 3 different but related questions. What if drugs were cool? What if drugs were scary? And what if drugs could redefine your perception of human existence? I don't think Wipeout went quite that far with its first 2 entries into the PlayStation generation, but it was riding the same wave. For instance, there is the infamous magazine ad in Europe and North America. It featured British DJ Sarah Cox and an unknown male companion sitting on a couch, staring into the middle distance, and suffering a massive nosebleed. Ostensibly, their bloody noses were courtesy of the G-force brought on by Wipeout's breakneck pace. But the implication was clear. Wipeout raves so hard, it's such a goddamn rush, it's like overdosing on nose drugs. The 90s were all about edgy and gross magazine ads, but Wipeout's thesis of, "This game is so good, it'll get you the maximum level of fucked up before dying," made a promise for PlayStation that neither Nintendo nor Sega felt capable of matching. Wipeout will let you ascend to a higher plane, and the trip might even cost you your life. You are not ready. Wipeout XL, sold as Wipeout 2097 in Europe, released to PlayStation a year later in the fall of 1996. It surfed the wave even higher when it included an instrumental version of Firestarter, the iconic song sung by the Prodigy, some of the most fucked up guys out there. Wipeout XL knew how to party even if you didn't, and it obeyed the typical duties of a sequel. It was the Wipeout you knew, but harder, better, faster, and stronger, and without the need for masked French DJs. In the PlayStation version of the game, most of the soundtrack was licensed out to Underworld, Photech, Fluke, and the fucking Chemical Brothers, and the Future Sound of London. And yes, I know that one of the members of Underworld is from Wales. Nothing against Psygnosis' in-house producer Cold Storage, who got 2 songs into the PS1 version and took care of the full soundtrack in the Saturn version, but the licensed music was the actual shit that was actually being played at the actual raves in actual London. Wipeout XL brought the party to you, only it replaced dancing with racing. It's a message that's clear as soon as Wipeout XL loads past the title screen. Gone is the prosaic center-aligned list of basic options. In its place is a splash screen menu that tells the player everything that actually matters all at the same time, and looks extremely cool while doing so. Get the game logo up top, the modal game type with custom-designed icons on the left, and a rotating 3D model of your craft in the center, and the class and track icons on the far right. Options to dial the game down in finer detail are accessible at the bottom. At the time, I had never seen a menu that looked like this in my life. The essential information was simultaneously all over the place, while still feeling intuitive and well-organized. Finally, font nerds, optimal efficiency weirdos, and symmetry perverts all had one place to call home. If my school textbooks were organized like this, my grades would have substantially improved. It's always cool when someone cares enough to make ordinary information appear extraordinary. Enter a Race in Wipeout XL starts almost identically to the original Wipeout. The hum of the idling jet engines swell in the background. A drone craft, which looks like the exact same caution-taped marked caddy from the original game, appears and deposits your vehicle onto the starting grid. 3, 2, 1, go.
3, 2, 1, go.
Is the call to action. But it's a new voice in the mix. Gone is the British guy from the original Wipeout, and in his place is a modulated text-to-speech voice. In No Clip's excellent documentary on the music of Wipeout XL, the new voice was shown as sourced from a speech program in the Commodore Amiga and then chopped, screwed, and remixed into the eventual narrator of all things Wipeout XL. I think it's an improvement over the original, removing the human element and draining all emotion, and replacing it with a cybernetically enhanced commentary on the impending level of violence. Like before, the name of the projectile being fired live on course is spoken aloud. It's once again a warning for the player. Here, listen to some samples.
Autopilot engaged. Electrobolt. Mines. Missile. Shield. Energy low. Rockets. Contender eliminated.
Did you hear that last one?
Contender eliminated.
Wipeout XL added a health bar beneath its engine thrust bar. If that health bar drains completely, then the camera switches to an isometric shot of your dying vehicle as it slowly explodes, presumably killing its pilot. Consequently, players can now also kill their opponents. You can either whittle their damage away with one of the handful of rockets, or hit them with an absurdly powerful plasma bolt for a one-and-done. You can actually get energy back by driving through short recharge lanes, wishboning the course near the starting line. But, like pit maneuvers in a racing game, it's going to come at the cost of some time. Some other new weapon pickups join the plasma bolt. Thunder Bomb is basically an area of effect grenade. The Quake Disruptor is neat. It's basically the equivalent of someone picking up one end of a track like a rug and giving it a good flip move, which rolls a wave down the preceding section of the course for a massive group damage attack. Autopilot is a non-combat pickup, guiding the hovercraft down through the course error-free at maximum speed for 3 generous seconds. Autopilot is the best pickup in Wipeout XL and all future Wipeout games. There's an extra richness to the color palette drawn by Wipeout XL ships and courses. This is most evident in the omnipresence of a royal blue color across the game's aesthetic choices. The main menu has that blue background. Nearly every craft has blue somewhere on its livery, and the loading screen is primarily blue. Most importantly, the afterburner jets that provided visible thrust to every anti-gravity craft in the original Wipeout have been replaced by a sparkling jewel of a jet engine that emits a streaking blue exhaust column. Every single craft on the course emits a blue streak, essentially transforming otherwise hard-to-see opponents into bright lines of linear color. This blue light is also spilling out of the player's ship, permanently fixed to the bottom center of the television. It's the only blue line that matters. I don't know why, maybe I'm trying to figure it out right now, but that blue streak behind every anti-gravity craft functions as a signature on every memory I have of Wipeout XL. I see that blue color in my head every time I think of the game, like a highly specific form of synesthesia. Wipeout XL is royal blue, and royal blue is Wipeout XL. It's also a highlighter marking the route across most tracks, and somehow, it's always bright enough to stand out. I don't know if this is apocryphal, but it reminds me of what I heard about ancient royalty in the color purple. Purple so infrequently occurred in nature, and the dye to color garment fabric purple was so rare, peasants had never seen it. When a prince or a king or whatever was draped in purple, the minds of feeble peasants couldn't reconcile that color with their reality. I feel the same way about the shade of royal blue blasting out of Wipeout XL's anti-gravity crafts. It's as if my eyes have never seen that specific shade of blue before. Wipeout XL's new collection of racecourses helps it stand out further apart from its predecessor. It's kind of crazy that Wipeout XL began development as a map pack for the original game, especially when you factor in its protracted 7-month development time. Collision sound effects, which were absent from the first game, provide audible feedback to miscalculations and fuck-ups. Those same fuck-ups no longer bring the craft to a total stop either, but grind the craft against the edges of the course and only dampen speed. The physics were also kind of retooled, reducing the insane bounce of higher drops and placing a higher emphasis on the nuance of the ancillary air brakes attached to the L2 and R2 buttons. Talon's Reach is the track that opens Wipeout XL and aesthetically and technically introduces the player to Wipeout XL's new and improved methods of operation. Set in Canada, a blue and white checkerboard starting grid gives way to a yellow checkered barrier and a space tubes. We're far up north and it's at night, so it seems like Earth, but it's also the year 2097, and cognizant that it's allowed to get away with space-age design ideas instead of a land-based racecourse. With its angular walls and generous surface area, the entire track feels like it's made out of a stretched-out hexagon. Talon's Reach feels like a subway tunnel that someone tried to make and then gave up before tracks were laid down. It could be a pedestrian walkway across skyscrapers that never existed. Maybe it's designed like the staff tunnels that run below Disney World, where they wheel away all of the bodies. In any case, Talon's Reach is accented by 16x9 billboards, extended lines of 4 parallel support columns, and random elevated box fans. It's a bit too busy to catch every single detail, but it's a bold choice for a game focused on speed and precision. The art team for Wipeout XL could have practically done anything they wanted, as long as it felt like the future when it was in front of your eyes. Sagamartha is the second track. As the name implies, it's set in the Himalayas' most famous frigid mountain, Mount Everest, in Nepal. Sagamartha is a snow level, albeit without the traditional slippery surface video game pratfalls because its slicked, icy surfaces do not affect anti-gravity technology. Snowflakes fall visibly on the course but have no mechanical side effects. Other natural scenery includes the omnipresent backdrop of a snowy mountain range, static, overcast skies, and an abundance of snow-covered coniferous trees. Segments of the track feel like they're either hollowed out of a mountain's core, which that level of environmental abuse seems reasonable in 2097, or like they're carved out of the ice like a bobsled track. You know what the coolest, pun not intended, part of a snowy winter day is? When there's so much snow packed on buildings, over the ground, and in trees that it deadens the natural echoes of the world and softens the global hum of your immediate area. It's a planet on mute, or at least at a lower average decibel than your ears are normally consuming. GoldenEye's 4th level surface especially nailed this feeling. Anyway, Sagamartha doesn't actually do that, but it feels like it does when I play it. My brain fills in the negative space in the absence of that space, which almost seems like I'm dividing by 0. In any case, I know playing Wipeout XL without listening to music seems blasphemous, but try and race Sagamartha specifically with the music turned off. It has vibes, or it's based, or whatever the new language children are using to indicate that doing so causes a good, positive, and/or unique sensation. Next up is Valparaiso, which is my favorite course in Wipeout XL. It's set in Chile, a country I remember because my 3rd grade teacher was obsessed with Chile. Valparaiso stands out because it's the only course that is clearly set in the middle of a rich, natural environment. In this case, a jungle. Wipeout XL's lore even indulges in this, stating, Valparaiso
was the subject of huge environmental protest when it hosted its first competitive race. It cut through vast swaths of jungle deemed essential to the delicate balance of life on Earth.
The track loads up and it's green, like some of the greenest green that's ever been on the visible spectrum in a video game. The matte blue sky and the clay-colored track present a serene color combination unlike anything else in Wipeout XL or its predecessor. If you look closely across the starting grid, you can see a pack of brown birds of some kind flying across that screen. A strange fact I've observed is these birds are even in motion when the game is paused. The remainder of Valparaiso trades laser-cut tunnels and installation art for lantern-lit caves and natural waterfalls. There's even a little adobe pyramid near the end of the course, and because we're into destroying the environment, of course you fly through the pyramid. Phoenicia Park is course 4, and it's where the Germans got involved. This is also where I tell you that I don't know where most of Wipeout XL's lore comes from, only that it's been scattered across fandom wikis and was originally sourced on now lost promotional material and Wipeout official website bullshit. Anyway, listen to this lore about Phoenicia Park.
Phoenicia Park was a commercial business district on the outskirts of Hamburg, Germany. In order to win funding from the city leaders, the park's developers included an F3600 AG racing circuit in their plans. Despite never having contacted the AG Race Commission about the proposal. Although the park proved a popular location for local businesses, the circuit itself remained dark for 7 years until the commission finally agreed to hold races there if it could be upgraded to F5000 status. This was finally achieved under the direction of Dieter Schmidt, a Hamburg plumber and AG fan, and Phoenicia Park became a hugely popular European race venue.
Dieter fucking Schmidt got it done. That all sounds plausible, right? In practice, Phoenicia Park's opening flyby presents an intimidating vista. A sky so orange and red it could practically be on fire. And on the ground, the dull concrete of office buildings with symmetrical windows. It's hideous. The most garish, vomit-flavored crime in Wipeout XL. But maybe it's supposed to be that way. Is there anything more hellish and soul-crushing than an office park? Shouldn't this be hell? Like any decent office park, there are sections of finely curated green space and inoffensive, featureless trees. At least you get to drive anti-gravity craft through it, which you cannot do yet in any office park on Earth. Gare d'Europa is the 5th course, and it's in France. I probably pronounce its name incorrectly, a side effect of not speaking French. But we do have one French speaker. The lore is insane. Check this out.
By the time Gare d'Europa was built in 2081, the disused French metro system had fallen into the hands of a vast criminal underworld, which existed entirely separate from legitimate society. The United Nations was eventually briefed to clear the criminals from the tunnels, and in a bid to bring life back to the network, the Gare d'Europa became France's first ever and only AG racing circuit.
Based on that description, it seems like Garda-Europa is going to be a dark and gritty night level, the most fearsome of race courses. And it's true. The purple and off-white checkerboard racetrack presents a dramatic offset against the silhouettes of skyscrapers, with fine details only visible by the golden phosphor coating of the artificial lighting. Tunnel sections are night vision green, which looks fucking sick. Midway through the course, a Zeppelin or a blimp flies overhead, briefly flashing me back to Ridge Racer and its mandatory biplane flybys. The pitch blackness of the surrounding skies makes the outdoor sections of the track feel like it's miles high in the air, and massive, lobby-like interiors of the abandoned subway tunnels provide a tangible feeling of isolation. Odessa Keys, that's a hell of a name. It's the 6th course and is set in the Black Sea in Ukraine. Instead of a beachy paradise with idyllic coastal waters, Odessa Keys instead bleeds the sinister stylings of neon red and blue hell. It's almost all tunneled interiors, with only the outdoor sections illuminated by the glow of alternating red and blue lights. Odessa Keys pairs perfectly with the future Sound of London song Landmass from the soundtrack. Gentle keys, punchy synths, and soothing whirring greet the player at the starting line. But then the song goes crazy, the beats per minute increase, the synths start hitting faster, and a sense of dire urgency overtakes and commands the rest of the song. You're at the fucking rave. Darkness surrounds you, interrupted only by brief flashes of neon light. Plur, peace, love, unity, and respect is at its maximum output. Past, present, and future are now being experienced simultaneously. Leo Atreides' golden path lies before you. Everything is awesome, and it always will be. Back here in reality, I've never done ecstasy nor been to a rave, but throttling through Odessa Keys to the sound of Landmass has to be pretty close, right? The 7th course, which has to be unlocked, is Vostok Island. Even after it's unlocked, Vostok Island is only available to race in the Phantom and Rapier speed classes. You cannot race that one on easy. That name, Vostok, may suggest it's named after the early Russian space program and it's set somewhere in Russia, but it's actually set in the South Pacific Ocean. Lore points it toward the oceanic country of Kiribati, which is in the middle of nowhere. I didn't know it existed until I just Googled it, and I recommend you do too, but it's insane to me that 120,000 people live in a place so small and so far away from everything else. Anyway, Vostok Island opens indoors. Grandstands surround both sides of the checkerboard track in a domed-off arena. It's 3, 2, 1, go, and then you're off under a giant replay board and into another snow course. With a lot of tough wishbone path course splits in the track, and there's a goddamn massive sculpture of 2 snakeheads, fangs extended, and your craft shoots between them during a huge jump. What is this place? The correct answer, I think, is a volcano. It wasn't snow I noticed earlier, it was ash, and the fiery red neon that coats every tunnel simulates, I guess, lava. It's a neat theme, albeit one that I wish was in the light of day and not relegated to another darkened sky night level. In any case, I'm terrible at navigating Vostok Island, and I can barely finish under the time limit without getting sufficiently warmed up first. Oh, and a fun bit of trivia. In the downloadable content for the PlayStation Portable's Wipeout Pulse, Vostok Island got a sequel track called Vostok Reef. I love when race courses get sequels. The 8th and final track has a hell of a name. Spilskinonk. Spillishank? Spilskinonk. Spilskinonk.
Spilskinanky.
Spilskinanky.
In my head, for the first 10 years or so of Wipeout XL, I thought that word was spine shank. It's close enough and it has most of the same letters. Spine Shank was also a nu metal band at the time, and they had exactly one good song. But in Wipeout XL,
Spilskinanky
is set in the generic description of North America. And lore only tells us that it's set in an urban area that was abandoned after a massive earthquake. Spilskinonk is also another night course. The first fourth of it is walled off by a procession of abandoned buildings, almost making Spilskinonk, whatever that word is, feel like one of the city courses, like Seattle Circuit or London Circuit that used to dominate the cramped short tracks in the PS3-era Gran Turismo games. Spilskinonk isn't afraid to get weird for its midsection, featuring some roller rink-style blue and green tunnel lighting, alien circuit board tunnel textures, and brutalist nightmares of columns and buildings, all of which is filtered through rapid 45-degree turns. Spilskinonk is the toughest course in Wipeout XL, and really the only one I don't enjoy racing and repeating. It ain't fun, and I can't see shit. I can take solace in a strange fact that I only learned while writing this, which is that Spilskinonk is an anagram of Snake Plissken.
So Iroquois Pliskin was an alias.
Of course.
The anti-hero protagonist of John Carpenter's Escape from New York and Escape from LA, the latter of which released the same year that Wipeout XL came out. right at the end of its development cycle. That's neat, and that's also Wipeout XL, the last Wipeout game that I played on PlayStation. Listeners of Culture may already know there was one more Wipeout game made for the PlayStation 1. The third Wipeout game was appropriately titled Wipeout 3, and did not fall into the trap of making an E in Wipeout into a 3. I've seen Wipeout 3 in motion. It looks nice. It looks perfect, actually. The pristine and clean world appears absent of the grit, grime, and grays of its predecessors, signaling that its stated year of 2116 has removed all the blemishes of Wipeout's earlier days. In any case, I've never played Wipeout 3. I'm saving it for some undetermined point in the future when I'll need it the most. And rather than expand upon that strange topic, I will instead direct you to our Patreon mini-season 4, episode 18, focusing on Crimson Dragon, which is all about the phenomenon of saving shit for later. As for Wipeout's other sequels, I avoided Fusion on PS2 for reasons that remain unclear even to me. I picked up Wipeout Pure when I bought a PlayStation Portable in the summer of 2005, and I greatly enjoyed its sequel, Wipeout Pulse, in 2007. Wipeout HD and Wipeout HD Fury, PlayStation 3 renditions of Pulse and Pure, were wonderful, as were their 4K and VR upgrades found in the Wipeout Omega Collection on PlayStation 4, which also included an upscaled version of the former Vita-exclusive Wipeout 2048. All of those games were a mouthful, but I felt like it was necessary to name-drop them into this episode. I have continued to play Wipeout and carried on my vision quest to see if British people could once again allow me to live in the future while I am still trapped in the present. The Wipeout Omega Collection specifically is an incredible assembly of games, all of which, even a decade later, remain some of the fastest and most visually appealing games ever made for a future anti-gravity racer. I have to throw in the qualifier for a futuristic anti-gravity racer to weed out bros expecting the bombast of Forza Horizon, or the cartooning perverts who tinker with all of the junk in Gran Turismo. But Wipeout Omega Collection is what it is, and it is the best at what it is, which is what it does. Which is look pretty cool, sound cool, and work to overcome your brain's latency. All in ways that suggest you're enjoying a product made either for the future people of the next century or the cast of hackers, if they could be enshrined in the 90s.
Shit on me.
I could even make an argument that Wipeout is in the Tetris category of potential perfect game. Controller input is minimal, anyone can enjoy the sights of sounds in Wipeout on a basic level, and yet the skill ceiling is quite high. Efficient and effective Wipeout play is poetry in motion. It's one of the wildest games to watch a professional speedrun for your charity dollars. I don't wish many video games were real because of all the homicide, antisocial behavior, and carbon emissions they would produce, but I do wish we could recover alien technology and use it to make Wipeout-style racing a reality. It would solve so many problems. I am not skilled enough to play any version of Wipeout at a competitive level. I've never been great at Wipeout XL or really any Wipeout game. For me, Wipeout XL is a nice disc to insert into my PlayStation 3 to 6 times a year. I'll spend an hour casually cruising through every course and appreciating the audio and visual presentation before me. Being old means that I will forget the finer details of this experience every few months, allowing me to replay Wipeout XL and enjoy it all over again whenever I wish. That royal blue streak left behind by every ship is a breadcrumb trail back to the game. When I replay Wipeout XL, I'll remember what it was like to be 14 years old and to feel like I am seeing something with my own eyes that I have never seen before. I don't think that specific sensation will ever happen again with a video game, or at least from a game's presentation. Games seem to have plateaued visually, and I refuse to appreciate games that make an effort to reproduce the real life that I can go outside and see every day. I don't understand the point of bespoke killing animations, sick gun design, or one-to-one reproductions of different buildings in New York. I wish every game was somehow the menus from modern Atlas games, or the monster design from Folklore, or anything that favored animation over technical ability to create depictions of things that already exist. I'm losing the point I was making, which I think is that games of Wipeout's ambition, budget, and scale in 1996 don't seem to be getting made in 2024. At least not from a first-party studio or anyone trying to sell a $70 game on a console platform. It's the meme where an old person tells a younger person that we can't make a specific thing anymore because no one remembers how to build it. The set of circumstances that drove its creation are gone. Sony rebranded Psygnosis to Studio Liverpool in 2001, and shut Studio Liverpool down in 2012, and a game like Wipeout, other than a cynical token inclusion in a game like Astrobot, will never again be worn as an identity badge for PlayStation. It's done. It cannot be 1996 again. No one will be impressed by three-dimensional graphics moving at high speed set to blistering electronic music because it's already been invented. That time happened, and there cannot be a time paradox. It's the same reason why you can never make or remake the movie Hackers today. Too many people understand computers, and audiences would never buy it. You'd have a better chance trying to remake Tron, the movie where a guy gets sucked into the computer, as evidenced by the fact that there's a new Tron movie in development where guys will once again get sucked into or sucked off by the computer. It's time to let a thing come out and exist only to be fully appreciated either by the demographic who saw it in its time and place, or curious Zoomer psychos who have an interest in kitsch media. The retro games crowd knows this well. Ideally, Wipeout XL and Hackers belong in a library. It doesn't belong in a museum because it's not a thing that you go and look at. It belongs in a library because it's a thing you pick up and interact with through linear time. And preferably a library with a cathode ray tube television and an original Sony PlayStation. Relics of the past are gifts to the future. You should be able to go inside most libraries and enjoy media that nobody in a suit can figure out how to sell anymore, even if that media wasn't made by British people. Maybe someone, another person who understands and appreciates libraries, will walk by when you're playing Wipeout XL. Maybe they'll ask, "What the fuck is that?" And you can tell them all about the Prodigy and Red Bull and Designers Republic and Psygnosis. And then they can enjoy Wipeout too. Wipeout XL taught me more about British people than Mary Poppins, James Bond, or the Revolutionary War. Maybe that's an indictment of my personal media interests in the American education system, but it's also true. If I can remember a game enough to spend 11 months writing 12,000 words about it, it has to be important, at least to me. From my point of view, there is no purer form of truth. The sun eventually set on the British Empire. But the same should not be true for its greatest cultural export, Wipeout. It's easy to play Wipeout today and find a fun but limited racing game. A curio good for 15 minutes of entertainment. But it's also possible to pick it up and stumble upon a collection of light and magic that, almost 3 decades ago, was unlike any game that ever came before it. The totality of the Wipeout experience stands without equal. It is perfect, and it is infinite.
Hey, that's the name of the show.
Gosh, Chris, that was fun. Hey, do you have any thoughts about Wipeout? Do you ever play Wipeout? The PlayStation game, not the fucking game show thing?
Yeah, I'm proud owner of Wipeout Omega Collection.
Oh, wow. So that's Wipeout HD, Wipeout HD Fury, and Wipeout 2048 upscaled.
Yeah, which I don't know what any of those are.
Okay. You can just listen to the episode we just made and learn.
Oh, okay. Well, and I played it for, 20, 30 minutes. I think I got it on sale so that I could show it to my kids to see if they would like it.
Did the kids give a fuck about Wipeout? Are the children, are they knowledgeable?
They did not give a fuck about Wipeout, but that was several years ago, I think. That thing's been around for a while, right?
The collection itself is almost 10 years old.
Okay, so I'm thinking now that maybe I should give it another shot and see if they like it.
Let the children play Wipeout. Let them into the Anti-Gravity Racing League.
My favorite Wipeout game is actually, it's called Hot Wheels Unleashed.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's a Hot Wheels game.
Do they use the anti-gravity technology powered by UFOs?
There's no anti-gravity technology, but I feel like it moves like Wipeout in terms of like how you would, how you'd set up Hot Wheels tracks and loop around and go up and do loop-de-loops and stuff like that.
I mean, there's no loops in Wipeout, but, sure.
Okay, maybe it's a speed thing, maybe?
Yeah.
A speed thing, lots of cars?
A speed thing with cars would qualify. I'll give you that. Are there weapons? Are there weapon pickups?
I don't think so.
Okay. I think you're just thinking of an arcade racer, but that may be... You know what? If it's Wipeout to you, it's Wipeout to me, Chris.
It's something that moves fast.
Okay, there you go. That is almost the entire thesis I have as well. It's something that moves fast. Retitle the entire episode.
Yeah, I've never been much of a racing game kind of person, so I only have a handful of games loaded into my memory. But Wipeout, to me, looks fun, but it never clicks with me.
I understand that. Yeah, I'm no fucking good at the game. I just enjoy playing it, so I understand completely. Well, thanks, folks. That was Infinite Perfect Episode 3. Episode 4 will probably be coming in 2025. I don't know.
Who knows, you guys?
We will see you next time.
Next time on Infinite Perfect.
Made by the prolific Liverpoolian... Educated and erudite listeners may already be able to Wipeout and Wipeout XL may have been the first 2 games I played to license music. Wipeout and Wipeout, they feel like magnets. There was a boy... Insert Chris lore document. Actually, yeah, if you want.
Chris lore document. Where's the lore document? Oh, you already gave it to me?
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? Okay.
Did you destroy the lore document?
No. I thought that you only gave me lore documents for Vagrant Story, and I was looking for some stuff under that desk last night, and I got this lore document, and I had no idea what it was.
The fuck it was?
Yeah, in fact, I completely forgot about it.
There are other lines for you in this, but right now we're just doing the timeline. I will say the time, like the year, and then you can say the words after it.
All right.
And just do your best. You can repronounce it if necessary, obviously.
The general public's suspicions are aroused as fuel taxes are increasingly
I know.
AG-driven vehicle. Do
your best.
The NX IOOO. Worldwide ecological and economical optimism relives tension between the Western world...
Gotta cut you off. Relieves, not relives.
I hate your fonts. Just a basic font.
I can fix it.
I hate basic assholes. No,
I can email it to you.
No, I'm just kidding.
Also, it's written in British English, so they use words differently than we do.
2038, right?
Yep.
Oh, come on! Well, hello there. Have no fear, Blasto is here.
Atma takes place in Canada. Atma 7 takes place... The need to rave wherever and allowed it to look and feel different from anything released thus far in the 32... Firestarter.
Ready? Aim. Fire! This is gonna be one big-ass barbecue with no one left to kiss the cook. I'll torch Calypso's blimp and send it flaming into the ground like a 4th of July firecracker.
The model game type with custom drops and placing higher emphasis on the nuancy. No, Tiffany had to send her a pick of her insurance card. Since when? Oh, yeah. Gotcha. I'll need you for more words in about 2 minutes. Yeah, it's like 2 sentences. Yeah. Basically, you're doing course lore. You may want to hang on for the next page and a half.
Turn my shit up. My headphones on so I can hear. Sure, I can hear myself right. Oh, there we go. Okay, so what? This
Valparaiso was the subject.
Oh, it just was the subject of a
unit. Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. Do I say Valparaiso?
No.
Okay. Garderoba?
By the time Garderoba.
Yeah, I'm just making sure I was saying right.
Yeah, I mean, I have no idea. I have no fucking clue.
You guys, listen, we got a higher purpose here, right? A wake-up call from the Nintendo generation. We demand free access to data. Well,
that entire thing, I think that'd be the first time I'd want to kill you.
Oh, no, I checked it every 20 minutes or something.
I know you did. I'm just saying.
Yeah, that would be one time we're not streaming it, and we wouldn't have a auto backup. Yeah. But limiting racing games...
No, go at the bottom. Where it says Chris.
Chris. It's actually... let me see see what the name of it is so I can say it correctly. Just thought of this.
Playtime is ended.